Wow, just wow, the Canon EOS R, a full-frame mirrorless camera. I have so many words, like thank you Canon for sending this, and thank you Canon for sponsoring this video. Wow. I think they knew I needed the EOS R in my life. Although I've been a Canon EOS M50 user for so many years, it was clearly time for more. When I started this channel, I was mainly making travel videos, and there was a very real need to keep my gear small and low cost due to risk of theft or damage. And then after becoming a mom, I still thought it was easier to use small gear because there were so many other things to carry now, like a baby, and then later a similar risk of damage with a toddler running around. But the main thing I was missing, or just forgetting after moving from Canon DSLRs years ago to the compact EOS M50, was how much easier it actually is to shoot on a bigger camera. And of course, how much better the images and video can be. Now, I have always stuck to Canon cameras. I've never really considered shooting on anything else because to me, Canon cameras just feel the way cameras should feel and look and shoot, and the imagery they produce is the best. Like, I can look at footage and tell if it was shot on Canon or not. At least I think I can. Canon imagery just pops in a very natural, smooth, and beautiful way. And from a user perspective, Canon cameras are the most user-friendly and intuitive to operate, and dual pixel autofocus is the best. That's no secret. And of course, these are my true and honest opinions based on like 20 years of experience. I'm not just saying this because Canon sponsored this video. If you go back on my channel, you will never see me using a different brand of camera, except for maybe like an action camera or something. I have always been a Canon girl. Overall, Canon cameras just feel like home, and I have never had that feeling so much as when I first held the EOS R. A camera I have never used before, felt like it had always been a part of me. It was like holding my baby for the very first time. Dramatic, I know. And after using the EOS R for a few weeks now, I've had some major realizations that I absolutely need to share with you today. Mainly, I realized that I should have upgraded to this camera years ago. I regret that I didn't, because I realized that my skill set in imagery could have improved even more if I had just stopped clinging to that need for small and embraced the power of Canon's truly professional equipment. So in this video, I'm going to take you along on my upgrade journey to the Canon EOS R. We're going to talk specs, shoot some footage, and discuss everything from lenses to color grading the C-Log footage that you can shoot with this. And along the way, I'm going to share several reasons why the Canon EOS R is quickly becoming my favorite tool for shooting video. I will say that as of right now, you can save $200 off the EOS R RF 24 to 105mm F4 L IS USM kit until January 2nd, 2022. Of course, that offer is subject to terms of sale and restrictions may apply. And now let's talk about why you might want to invest in a full-frame camera to begin with. The reason a full-frame sensor creates better images than a crop sensor is because a larger sensor has larger pixels, and this allows it to capture more light and more detail overall. A full-frame sensor like you find on the Canon EOS R is going to perform better in low light because you can use higher ISO settings without the image falling apart or displaying too much noise. Here's a side-by-side of low light shooting on the EOS M50, which is a crop sensor mirrorless, great camera, but it does have a smaller sensor, and the EOS R, a glorious full-frame. A full-frame sensor is also going to give you more dynamic range. And oh, I love dynamic range. High dynamic range basically means there are going to be more values of exposure within your image and more detail in your photo's light and dark areas. So if the image were black and white, there would be more shades of gray between the blacks and the whites, which just make the image look so good and so professional. Now the cool thing is, more dynamic range also means that if you overexpose or underexpose your image, there's a greater range of tones you can play with and correct in post, so you're more likely to make that image look great again. This can be a lifesaver for beginners, especially because nailing exposure can be tricky sometimes, and having the ability to fix things in post is a huge bonus. So now we know that the Canon EOS R is a full-frame camera, but you can also note that its full-frame CMOS sensor is packed with 30.3 megapixels and works with a Digic 8 image processor. It's got a high-precision electronic viewfinder and a large vari-angle touchscreen LCD, my absolute favorite thing ever. It's also got built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth technology, which I can tell you is great for shooting video of yourself because you can connect via the Canon Connect app to your phone and use your phone as a monitor, not only to start and stop your video, but to touchscreen to focus. So if I wanted to do a little rack focus from the camera to the lights in the background, just got the screen. So the Wi-Fi is an awesome feature. It's also on the EOS M50 and I use it all the time. Another cool thing about the EOS R is that its firmware has been updated numerous times since its release. So anything you heard in the past about its capabilities could be improved upon by now. The latest firmware is version 1.8 and it offers some serious improvements to the autofocus on the EOS R and the EOS RP. Now, like I said, Canon's dual pixel autofocus has always been great, as you can see, but the new firmware improves autofocus frame tracking, so autofocus works faster while shooting video, even on the subject at a distance. It also has improved eye detection autofocus, where it locks onto your actual eye rather than just your face, and this can be very helpful when shooting with large apertures, where parts of the face might be out of focus by design. You're always going to get that eye super sharp. All right, so now we are heading out to the field here in Pensacola, Florida, so I can get further acquainted with shooting on my Canon EOS R. And I'm also going to share a whole bunch of reasons why upgrading to a full-frame mirrorless camera is a great idea, whether you're coming from using the EOS M50 Mark II or the EOS M6 Mark II, or you're just starting out, because a camera like this is a great choice for beginners as well, even if you're doing just like a casual vlogging thing, which is why I wanted to show you what a casual vlogging shot looks like. So the first reason, the thing I realized that I had to share, is that the EOS R is actually really easy to use for photography and video. There's just lots of little conveniences that come along with a camera like this that make it easier to learn and easier to use than a camera like the EOS M50. Now, I know that unboxing was a little bit stylized, but I can tell you a few of my first thoughts were, wow, this camera is so big and I'm so afraid I'm gonna somehow drop it. I also thought, oh no, this looks so in depth, like how am I gonna figure out how it all works? But literally within the first moments of using it, I realized that because of its size, it makes it easier to use than a smaller camera. Like this grip specifically is just made perfectly for your hand. And when I hold it, I feel so much more confident that I'm not gonna drop it than if it were a smaller camera. Another thing that kind of seems intimidating at first, but actually turns out to be really convenient, is the increased amount of different functions and dials and buttons and things you can set up to control different settings on your camera. For example, it's got this slider bar in the back that you can use to adjust white balance or just whatever you program in there. It's also got this front multi-function dial that you can set up to control aperture or shutter speed, whatever you like. So you can really set up the EOS R to work in a very functional and intuitive way for you and what you are shooting. Another thing which I absolutely love is that the SD card slot is on the side of the camera, right where it should be. So you can access the SD card super easily. It can still be attached to the tripod. Unfortunately, on a camera like the EOS M50, they've got to make things smaller, so the SD card is inside the battery chamber, which means you've got to take the quick release plate off just to get to it. But the SD card slot being right here is going to make things so much easier for me. The EOS R also has this super large screen to work with, which of course makes everything easier. Everything from framing up the shot to choosing your settings. If you are someone who uses the touchscreen a lot to change settings, I certainly do. I love that about Canon cameras in general. And the final just little convenience that the EOS R offers is that this camera is weather sealed. So it's got this super heavy metal mount on the RF lens, and it connects just super tightly. And what weather sealing actually means is that the camera should be able to withstand splashes of water. So if you're out shooting in the rain or if you're out shooting in snow, it's not going to absolutely destroy your camera just because there's a little bit of weather, which is nice. So the EOS R is a little bit bigger and heavier than what I'm accustomed to using. The body comes in at 660 grams. But besides that, there's literally nothing about it that strikes me as making it more difficult to use than the EOS M50 or crop sensor mirrorless. I'm absolutely loving the challenge, and I look forward to just learning a lot more and doing a lot more with this camera. All right, now the next thing about the Canon EOS R that is really gonna make it my go-to camera is the fact that it shoots legit 4K. In the last few years, I've kind of gone back and forth about whether or not I really want to shoot 4K most of the time, but now that we are moving into 2022, I think it's very important to at least have that ability when you need it. So the EOS R shoots beautiful 4K at 24 and 30 frames a second, and you get to keep that crisp dual pixel autofocus in this mode. And this, unfortunately, is in contrast to the EOS M50, where you lose your dual pixel autofocus when you switch to 4K, which kind of makes it not really worth switching to 4K. Now, there is still a crop on the EOS R in 4K mode, but it is completely different than on the EOS M50 because it's a full frame sensor and focal lengths present themselves in a different way to full frame sensors. So the crop sensor camera has a 1.6 times crop on the image. For example, this is a 24mm lens, totally fine for vlogging, and on a crop sensor you need at least 18, probably more like a 16 for vlogging. Hey girl, we're in 4K right now, aren't we? Hey, no, Mama didn't do my hair that well today. Now, another reason I am loving this upgrade to the Canon EOS R and very excited about it moving forward is the numerous amount of lens options I now have with that RF mount. Of course, EF lenses can also be adapted to work with the RF mount, but all of the RF lenses are fairly new. There's a huge range of them, and I'm so excited about trying different ones. In fact, this lens right here that comes with the EOS R kit that I mentioned earlier that's on sale is a very impressive piece of gear. It's a 24 to 105mm F4 L IS USM lens, and it's a super solid, versatile, and capable lens that's regularly priced around $1,000. The USM provides fast and nearly silent autofocus, also important for video because you do not want your audio picking up the sound of a lens motor. It's got this 5-stop image stabilization, which is pretty impressive so far and definitely helps when you do not have a gimbal handy. The 24mm is wide enough for vlogging shots, and the 105mm zoom is pretty intense for creating that long lens look, which is great for portraiture. It's also great for creating beautiful bokeh or parallax of the background in the video, which is this amazing effect that I absolutely love. You've got to be really stable when getting things like this, but I mean, gosh, it looks so cool. The 105mm zoom is also great for capturing things like wild dolphins in the bayou when you're on your boat. Now, I completely was not expecting this at all the very first time I took out this camera, but I did my best at shooting wildlife. I mean, this is the situation where you need a long lens.
They're gonna come right back up any second. Literally, there you go.
Did you see that, Ella? So essentially, we're surrounded by dolphins right now. I get so nervous in these situations.
Wow!
Ella, be on the lookout for me, okay, sweetheart? Wow, look at this sunset! And while we're here, I do have one more lens that I want to show you. This is the Canon RF 35mm f1.8 Macro IS STM. So that is a super large aperture, and I specifically asked Canon if I could loan out this lens as I get to know this camera because I love shooting at large apertures and I just wanted to see what it could do on a full frame camera. It's also a macro lens, which is really interesting because you can get very close up and it's going to focus at a short distance. So even though we're losing our light here, the large aperture is going to be great for low light, and I want to see what I can get these flowers to look like. I might use a little bit of a fill light, but I think it's going to look awesome on this lens. Let's check it out. And the final reason I'm excited about shooting video on the Canon EOS R is that I'm now able to shoot in C-Log. C-Log is a color profile that looks kind of flat and mucky straight out of camera, but it actually preserves the most detail in the image's highlights and shadows and allows you to get more dynamic range in post. So the color grading process looks a bit different than on the Rec. 709 you'll shoot with the Canon EOS M50. Basically, you'll have much more room to sort of pull apart the exposure to get it exactly where you like. Here in Final Cut Pro, I will hit Command 6 to bring up a new color board, then I'll switch over to color wheels for the most flexibility. I'll hit Command 7 to bring up the video scopes where you can see where all the information in the image is sort of hanging out. Then over here, I will just pull these highlights up and I'll pull the shadows down. And then I'm going to pull the midtones up so they are near the middle of this area. This then prompts me to readjust everything else until the highlights are almost at the top, the shadows are at the bottom, and the midtones are hanging out in the middle. Now this is looking pretty good, but a lot of times C-Log will look even better if you go in and add some saturation. Of course, there's so much more you can do with the color grading to tweak the colors and get a certain look that you like, but this is just the basic way to start the process and get the image looking nice. I do hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you'd like to check out the EOS R kit on sale, you'll find the link in the video description below. And if you'd like to learn more about this camera, then jump on my email list for updates, because I will definitely be shooting plenty of video with it in 2022 and sharing more of my experiences. Please comment below if you have any questions, and I will see you all in the very next video. Bye!